I've been working with new and emerging writers a fair bit lately, and you kind of tend to hear the same questions and comments over and over, or at least I do. Things like, everyone in Melbourne is so cliquey. How do you meet other editors? I went to this event and everyone just seemed to know each other. How do you meet other writers? You guys are all pretentious wankers, gross. I know Melbourne's a writer's hub and everything, but I like being in Brisbane better. People in Brisbane are much more open to talking to me. I'm new to the scene and I'm really struggling to make connections. I feel like I'm not cool enough to just go up to people and introduce myself. So it seems Melbourne has a bit of a reputation. We're snobby, we're insular, we're cliquey. And it's not like we're trying to be. Like, for all this talk about clickiness and people being unwilling to talk to other people, it's not like I've yet to meet anybody in the arts who's snobbed me off or who's been too cool to talk to me. And actually, most of the people I've met don't even think they themselves are cool. Like, pretty much every writer I've met kind of self-identifies as socially anxious or a giant dork. Still, I think we're aware we have this reputation, so we put a lot of effort into inclusion as individuals, as most organisations. Melbourne focuses a lot on trying to be diverse, and it's trying really hard. It doesn't always get it right, but it is trying. And personally, that's what a lot of my work has been about, this push towards inclusion and diversity. But lately I've been wondering a lot about that term, inclusion. For me, it brings to mind the image of a benevolent gatekeeper gracing me by allowing me entry into their special club. To use an analogy, and sorry if not everybody's familiar with this one, I grew up on The Simpsons, but I do realise it's a bit outdated at this point. But inclusion makes me think of that episode where a young Homer wants to join some other kids in a treehouse. So you've got this freckled little kid sitting at the top of the tree at the entrance of the treehouse, and there's a stream of kids climbing up. There's a stream of kids climbing up the wooden ladder to get in, and this freckled little kid is waving them up like, "Hey Billy, hey Joey, come on in, there's plenty of room." Then Homer gets to the top, and the kid stops him like, "No, not you, Homer." And Homer's like, "Why not?" And the kid points to a sign, and it says, "No Homer's Club." And Homer's like, "But you let Homer Glubnitch in." And the kid's like, "No, it says no Homers. We're allowed to have one." And here's the thing that kind of messes me up, right? Homer's sitting there being really upset about being excluded from this treehouse. But if that scene played out in 2018, I think the original scene's from like 1995, but if it played out in 2018 with all of 2018's wokeness and focus on inclusion and diversity, then it would probably play out differently, right? So you'd still have the treehouse high up in the tree, and there'd still be a wooden ladder to climb up, and the freckled little gatekeeper would be there waving people in, except this time he'd be waving everyone in. There'd be room for more than one Homer. There'd be room for Apu and Carl and Dr. Hibbert because people of colour would be allowed. There'd be room for Marge and Lisa and Miss Krabappel because women are allowed. And Smithers and Patty because queers are allowed. There'd even be room for old Dorothy, although given that she's in a wheelchair and the treehouse is, of course, inaccessible, there'd be room for her in principle until they got funding to install a ramp. But, she's definitely invited to the party even if she can't actually attend, because, that's inclusion. Meanwhile, while all this inclusion is happening, the treehouse itself is still the same size and height. It hasn't changed. And here's the thing. This treehouse that back in 1995 had plenty of room, in 2018 is probably starting to feel a little small. People are being squished in. And Billy and Joel and Homer Glubnitch, they're starting to suffocate in there. They remember the good old days when it was a nice, simple no Homers club before all their space was taken up. And at no point do they consider leaving the treehouse, because why should they? It's as much their treehouse as anyone else's. They've paid their dues. It's all the other people in the space that are causing the problem. But hey, that's inclusion. So anyway, Homer is being all sad about being excluded from the treehouse, but honestly, I'm not actually sure what's so great about it. It's inaccessible, it's cramped, it's in a damn tree. And yeah, there are people lining up for it, but look around. There's a whole world outside to play in. There are kids in parks, there are kids in pools, there are kids running around dreaming up big, beautiful dreams that aren't restricted by what they can and can't do within the four unbending walls of this treehouse. So I don't want to be invited into this treehouse. I don't think the treehouse should be there. I want to tear the treehouse down. And that's what I want the future of Melbourne as a city of literature to be. I want us to move beyond the idea of inviting people in. Don't get me wrong, it's a great first step. It's happening a lot more lately, and I'm really happy to see that. But I want us as a city to move beyond the idea of being invited to participate. But I want us as a city to move beyond the idea of being invited to participate in and reinforce the old systems. We should be working towards building better new systems, ones that take into account that the spaces we're playing in now can never work because they weren't built with us in mind. From their very inception, they were built on stolen lands. They were built on an ongoing genocide that we still have trouble so much as acknowledging more than 200 years later. They were built on long histories and policies of discrimination and exclusion, and those histories have permeated every inch of this system. So let's move beyond this idea of inclusion. Let's recognise that the structures we're asking to be included in are fundamentally flawed because they were built on stolen colonised land right from their roots, and everything that comes from that is fundamentally flawed. Let's recognise that these structures we're squeezing ourselves to fit into weren't designed for us, and let's design something new and better.
Visit wheelercentre.com for the best in books, writing and ideas from Melbourne, Australia and the world.